here's your host, Alex Garrett.
All right, here on One Leg Up with Alex Garrett, in just a couple of minutes, because I'm going to advise you to turn over to the Sports Spotlight feature of this podcast momentarily, where I get Terminello's take, Lou Terminello, on this perfecto. And let me tell you about the perfect game from Domingo German, if I can. This perfect game was pure perfection. From what I've looked at, what I've heard about this game, what I saw about this game, and ironically, I only turned in the last out to see the perfecto, but I do not believe there were any instant replay challenges to this perfect game, meaning there were no overturned calls, nothing controversial, some great athleticism to help the perfect game go along. But at the end of the day, this was pure perfection. And for Domingo German, how good does this feel? For a guy who has gone from suspension to perfection, how good does this feel? It has to feel incredible. And yes, he's had his on and off starts. Yes, he's been inconsistent. But look, the Yanks went to the coast. They actually scored 11 runs last night. And not to be outdone, they scored 10 today. So the offense was clicking for both him and Clark Schmidt today. And there was nice not to have a letdown in game number 81 of the season. But last night was pure perfection. And oh, by the way, a redemption game for a guy that's been suspended, been, with the assault situation and then everything like that. What a redemptive game last night was for Domingo German. And I am very proud of him. And I am so happy it was a pure, perfect game. There were no overturned calls. There were no controversial calls. Just pure perfection in Oakland. And that's all you got to ask for when you're a baseball fan. For a pure player, if you're a pure fan, just rest easy knowing that this was a pure perfection of a game. 27 up, 27 down, no instant replays, no reversals, no calls, just baseball. And some damn good hitting from the Yanks. A lot to be happy about there. And real fast, before I sign off on this 5-minute fix, you know who's been imperfect all week? Well, myself, for sure. And I'm fired up to work harder. But I got to play this cut because this is in the White House transcript, okay? And I know it's a couple days late. This came out on Monday, and here we are on Thursday. But it's been a hell of a week. I felt imperfect myself. Yesterday was the most imperfect day I could think of. But that little perfection by Domingo German made it all worth it in the end. And the redemptive factor inspires me. But we'll talk about that another day, perhaps. However, did you hear this? And if you want to switch over to the Sports Spotlight after this, you can. We're going to talk with Lou Terminello. Or if you're listening on the Sports Spotlight, stay right here. Lou Terminello's coming up. Either way, make your way to the Alex Garrett Sports Spotlight. But did you hear this craziness by President Joe Biden?
I was just thanking, anyway, I started off without you. And I sold a lot of state secrets and a lot of very important things that we shared. Now, all kidding aside, look.
All kidding aside, now that is imperfection. That joke is imperfect. That, I can go on and on. That moment right there shows the imperfections of the White House. So thank God the Yankees had a night of perfection. And I know we're going to talk about now the Yanks in the World Series, possibly, because every year they have to throw a perfect game. The World Series is in their hands as well. We'll have to see. But thank God the Yankees threw a perfect game. That brings some normalcy to the week, does it not? And on that note, here on the Alex Garrett Sports Spotlight, we'll continue with Lou Terminello. So if you're on the One Leg Up podcast, switch over right now. We'll talk with Lou Terminello. Talk to you soon.
Grounded to third. Donaldson has it. There it is. Perfection for Domingo German.
What a night last night in Oakland, California, as from a guy who was suspended just earlier this year to going on that mound in Oakland and making baseball history. Ryan Rucco with the call. And that's where we start. Lou Terminello's take. 24th perfect game in baseball history. He gave me a stat of 148 years or so to only 24. Domingo German, an unlikely add-on to the list. Welcome to the show once again.
Alex, thank you for having me again as usual. Yes, very unusual addition to the 24. But if you look at some of the 24 that have pitched perfect games, some of them weren't household names. But it really is unusual considering that 5 days ago, he gave up 8 runs and 4 home run balls to the Seattle Mariners. And the game before that, he gave up 7 earned runs at the Red Sox. So you just never know in baseball. It was his first complete game. And probably maybe the way baseball is played nowadays might be his only complete game in his major league career. So you don't know. But he gave the Yankees a much needed lift at a time that they needed a lift. And we'll see if this creates some momentum for them moving forward. They got to win tonight. Perfect game or not, they can't leave Oakland losing 2 out of 3.
Oh, I 100% agree there. By the way, it's one of the rare games Boone doesn't pull their guy in like the 6th inning. And I'm glad he didn't go with analytics at that moment. Just go with your gut, let him pitch, right? So
yeah, he only had his pitch count was low. He only threw 99 pitches for the game. And ironically, the last 2 outs, the A's swung at the first pitch. So he was in total command last night.
So, and I don't know, I know you went to bed. I ended up watching the tail end of the game. But also the offense coming alive. But what did you see through 7 innings that told you could this happen? We don't know, but was there anything that was showing signs? Because sometimes these games have a sign.
Alex, truth be told, I didn't even make 7 innings because I saw that the Yankees winning 7-0 in the 4th inning. I really didn't have any idea that German had retired every batter. If I did, I would have stayed up. I would have forced myself to stay up. But obviously, the guy has good stuff. He's a strikeout pitcher. He just has been woefully inconsistent. Even with the shutout last night, it only dropped his earned run average to 4.54. And he has only 31 wins in 6 years, 18 of them that came in that 1 year. But the Yankees, obviously, their pitching has been good overall. Their bullpen has been very good. And they really have no major names in the bullpen. So they've done a very good job. And if that's what's keeping the Yankees afloat, because their lineup without Judge is very pedestrian, very ordinary. And it just goes to show you how great a player Aaron Judge is. He is one of those rare baseball players that you stick him in the middle of the lineup. Well, the Yankees put him at the top of the lineup, but he makes everybody else better. That's very unusual in baseball. In other sports, hockey, basketball especially, making other guys better. But that's unusual in baseball. And Aaron Judge does that. And obviously, as you know, the Yankees have been struggling. Their on-base percentage since he got hurt on June 4th is a ridiculously bad 261. So they're going to need the pitching to continue to be good and scratch out runs here and there. And I think they'll be okay. And I think
it's amazing to me how they stifled the bats of Texas even. Texas didn't really even get many runs on the board this past weekend. So some good signs there. And as you say, they have to take the series down out in Oakland, or you can't lose to a way below 500 team 2 out of 3. But I think last night showed some promise and maybe confidence for everybody, including Giancarlo Stanton, who needs that confidence after the weekend he had in the Bronx.
Yeah, well, he needs to pick up the slack with Judge injured, and he really is. There's really more. He's more swing and miss than ever when I see him bat, and but they need him. They need him to go on one of those hot streaks, and I don't mean just hit a 450-foot home run and then go 0 for 10. They need him to be consistently an effective hitter, not just, like I said, those tape measure shots every 3 games or every 5 games. It's not going to do it. And the Yankees, all of a sudden, LeMayo looks old. Donaldson looks washed up. There's really no other way to say it. They do have some problems without Judge. It just shows you again how great Aaron Judge is.
Well, I also believe they need Bader to step up. He hit that big double on Sunday, and they all, they need everybody, not just the big guys, but they need the IKFs and the Baders,
no doubt,
and the Bowers, and your former Met Billy McKinney. How about that?
Well, Billy McKinney is one of those. But do you realize that I think Aaron Judge was drafted 11 picks after Billy McKinney, where they both were in the same draft. Billy McKinney is one of those guys who is, I guess, Major League scouts say he's a quadruple A player, which is just between the major leagues and the minor leagues, because he's had good stints in very short pockets of time with the Dodgers, with the Mets, now with the Yankees. The only thing is, I guess, once the scouting report catches up with the other teams, that's where he falls off. But he's done a good job for the Yankees, and they're going to continue to get efforts like that from players, these fill-in players. That's for sure.
Well, one last thing on this, because I want to turn to a couple other things before we wrap up here. But I want to ask you this: Fordham boys, Justin Shackle and Ryan Ruocco. It's kind of interesting, the changing of the guard. I remember last year Sterling was not supposed to be on the road trip where Aaron Judge hit 62, but he decided to go because he didn't want to miss it. Well, obviously on a random night in 2023, you're not going to hit every historic thing, but not having the voice of Kay or Sterling sort of said, well, the media's changing now 20 years later.
Well, you're talking to an old school guy. I enjoyed the days when I would be listening to a Met game, and Kiner, Nelson, and Murphy did both TV and radio, and Messer, White, and Rizzuto did both TV and radio. They did 3 innings on television. Then one of them would go over to the radio booth. The radio booth guy would come to the TV. I think that's the way it still should be. But like you say, things change. But Justin Shackle, in my opinion, I obviously don't work for the Yankees media team or their broadcast department. I think Justin Shackle, between last year with John not being there for all the games, and this year he did the 23 games when John was sick or took a leave for those 23 games. I think Justin Shackle has earned the right to be the full-time radio announcer. That's just my opinion. His call last night was perfect. He's an inexperienced announcer who has done less than 60 major league games on radio. He didn't overplay it. His call was perfect. Same thing with Ryan Ruocco. It's a little bit different on TV. You can let the moment breathe more, but both calls, in my estimation, and I critique a lot of broadcasts, they both get an A. There's no other way to say it. They both were excellent.
They were, and it's kind of cool they're Fordham, because of course Fordham has just had a history of producing great play-by-play guys over the years.
Absolutely. So, as many as Syracuse. You hear about Syracuse, the Newhouse Department of Broadcasting, which has produced great announcers. Ian Eagle and Marv Albert and Dick Stockton, and we can go right down the line. Bob Costas. But Fordham has done just as well, and of course they produced the greatest baseball announcer in baseball broadcasting history in Vin Scully.
Yes, of course, Vin Scully, and every interview in that box with him and anybody that went to the Dodger Stadium and did an interview with him, it was kind of chilling to see how awesome, it chills in your body when you see those interviews with him. But we move along to the other team in the city, which is the Mets. And, last night I saw a couple innings here and there that they had the bases loaded. They squared with that. I mean, okay, so you had a 7-2 win the other night, but there's no consistency in Queens right now.
Well, that's you hit the nail on the head. They've been inconsistent basically from game 22. I mean, they started out 14-7, but they have been inconsistent all year. And it could be just one of those years where nothing's really going to go right. Sometimes, like say 2 years ago when the San Francisco Giants won 107 games, everybody was saying, well, they're not that good. Everybody's just having a career year. Well, maybe sometimes it works the other way, where everybody on the roster is having a down year. And if you look at some of the Met statistics, every Met, with the exception of Nimmo, I think even Alonso, he might be right on the cusp of where he was last year, has a lower on base and slugging percentage than last year, and significantly. So they've been inconsistent. But even with their inconsistency offensively, and last night they had the bases loaded when the game was 2-2, and they only got, when it was 2-1, they made it 2-2, but they only got one run out of it. That was a death knell in the game last night. But Alex, their pitching staff has been an absolute disaster. The bullpen, besides Adam Ottavino and David Robinson, has been totally ineffective. They were counting on Drew Smith to pick up the slack a little bit after the Diaz injury. But the kid has good stuff. He doesn't have an out pitch. I mean, he came off the suspension the other night, and he does what he does. He threw a fastball that doesn't move, that went over the center field fence. He throws way too much home run balls, and the Mets as a team are throwing too many gopher balls this year. I think Scherzer has as many home run balls given up as he did the entire season last year. And Scherzer, for all the criticism they want to give him, is 7-2 on a team that is not good offensively or inconsistent offensively. So he's still Max Scherzer. And, you can look at a guy like Clayton Kershaw, who last year and the year before, well, he's old, he's probably over the hill. Never doubt these great pitchers. They find a way, and look at the year that he's having this year. I mean, the guy has been remarkable for the Dodgers, and, he's pushing 40 also. So, I mean, I would let up a little bit on the Scherzer and Verlander criticism. I mean,
how about Wainwright? I know he got rocked in Saturday in London, but Wainwright's still around too. I mean, these guys are not going anywhere yet.
Well, that's what's made them great. First of all, they have mental toughness, and they find a way to get out of trouble after they get in trouble. I mean, Kershaw has been tremendous. But when it comes down to the Mets, the starters have not given the Mets any length. I mean, last night, Senga threw 102 pitches in 5 innings. That's not good enough. Now, I don't know if they push him more. I don't know if it's this modern baseball philosophy of not pushing guys. I hope that there's somebody out there who's going to try to change that and start pushing these guys more to 125 pitches. I mean, I think Doc Gooden once threw 153 pitches in the game, and he didn't come out. You can go back to Nolan Ryan throwing 234 pitches, I think, in a 10-inning or an 11-inning game. Juan Marichal, the great Hall of Famer, 216 in a 14-inning game that he won 1-0. Again, I know things change, but you got to push these guys a little bit. Senga went 5 innings last night. Wade Miley for the Brewers went 4 innings. That means you have to have a pitcher come out early for whatever reason. Then you're going to have to count on 4 or 5 relief pitchers, 4 or 5 different guys to come out of the bullpen and be effective. That's tough. One of them is not going to be effective. 2 of them may not be effective. It's that's what's killing the Mets. These starters can't go more than 5 or 6 innings. I know it's a problem throughout Major League Baseball, but it's killing the Mets. It really is. Last year, the Mets were fundamentally sound. Attention to detail was impeccable. This year, not so much, not even close. Every player has underperformed, and with the exception of Brandon Nimmo and David Robertson. They were the only two guys, in my opinion, that I would give an A if I was doing a midseason grade. And today, the Mets hit the midseason mark at 81 games as we record this on Thursday. It's not good enough. They're 8.5 games out of the last wild card slot. Yes, they have time to get back in, but Alex, I don't see it. There's nothing there.
This was a really strange turn. I told you this a couple of days ago. The excuse of Diaz should not be used anymore. I think there's so much more to it. You got Steve Cohen doing a press conference saying we need a baseball ops man. I mean, I don't know. It feels like such a disarray, and I don't think Cohen's helping it right now.
Well, a couple of things. Obviously, even with Diaz hurt, they shouldn't be 8 games under 500. But yes, the Diaz injury was devastating and would be devastating as they go on. But Robinson's done a fine job, even though he would have been the perfect setup guy for Diaz. And in my opinion, I have no idea why Steve Cohen had a press conference yesterday. Does Lou Lamoriello have many press conferences? No. Leon Rose, and I know they're not owners. I know they're the general managers, but basically Steve Cohen had the press conference almost as the de facto president of baseball operations or acting as the general manager. Those are the questions that general managers and president of baseball operations usually ask. I would not have had the press conference. I don't know what it served. I didn't get anything from it. It was the same nonsense. Again, this was basically the same roster that was 101 and 61 last year. Now, one thing that I did agree with what he said, and you got to remember, this is really only his second year as owner. He came in that first year in December at the baseball winter meeting. So he really didn't have a chance to set up his organization yet. So this is really his third year. And he's trying, as he said, he's trying to pump more money and still get the minor league system and organization more tightened up. And I get that. And I think he's right. And he spent money to try to close the gap while he was building up the minor league system. And again, I understand that. And I agree with him on that. Alex, as somebody who watches the Mets on a daily basis, the only signing that I had a problem with, and I think we've talked about in the past, is rushing to sign Lindor. I've never been the biggest Lindor fan. Thank God he's been producing runs, but he shouldn't be batting 220. We need him to bat 285, Met fans do, and 290. He's a brilliant fielding shortstop. Whether he goes 0 for 20 or if he goes 10 for 20, he plays a brilliant shortstop. He's played a brilliant shortstop since day one. But offensively, too many lagging periods. And his on-base percentage is hovering around 290. That's terrible. It's got to be around 360.
It's not good. And I know Pete was injured for a while, but again, you still had the reinforcements there even while he was out. So I don't know, 8.5 back on June 29th. I'd say it sounds like the old Mets a little bit, but that's what it feels like at the moment. So what is your most surprising point while we're at the halfway mark, now that you mentioned it?
I just can't believe that the starting pitching has been this bad. Even with Jeff McNeil having a horrendous month of June. I mean, he won the batting championship last year. The rest of the Starling Marte, who was great for the Mets last year, looks like he's gotten old quickly. I don't know if that's the case. He might have a tremendous second half of the season. But yeah, those are the surprises. The lack of starting pitching has been remarkable. I mean, David Peterson, really a batting practice pitcher. I know he pitched a good game the other night, but I'm not sold on 6 good innings. Or at least he gave him 6 good innings. Tyler McGill. I mean, I actually thought that he would be a solid rotation guy, and the guy regressed. The pitching has been terrible, and it's taxed the bullpen. And they brought up these guys to try to lead into Smith and Ottavino and Robertson, who weren't on the roster on opening day, and Alex. They've all been ineffective. You saw it in Philly on Sunday. There's no way they should have lost that game.
Well, we'll talk about Buck on another show, but I want to ask you while we're the halfway point for everybody, biggest league surprise for you, league-wide?
Biggest league surprise for me, the Baltimore Orioles in the American League. Obviously, they went through 6 or 7 years where they were losing 110 games a year, which put them in good draft position, either drafting first or second, and they hit on those picks, who are all contributing now. The fact that they're 18, 19 games over 500 is a surprise to me. In the National League, there's 2. There's the San Francisco Giants, who are 11, 12 games over 500. And I didn't think they'd be a 500 team, or they just hover around 500. And the Miami Marlins, who are 13 games over 500. I think they're on pace to win like 93 games. And I knew they'd be improved. But Alex, they're 47-34, I believe, or 47-34. And Sandy Alcantara, last year's Cy Young Award winner, has not been good this year. So if he's good the rest of the way, and he's a terrific pitcher, if he straightens out, they're going to make the playoffs. They have a very good chance to make the playoff. And Luis Arraez, I mean, the guy was the batting champ in the American League last year. I was shocked when the Twins traded him. And now the guy's flirting with 400. And he might be I don't think anybody's ever led the American League one year and the National League the next in batting. So that's a team to keep an eye on. Other surprises, the Cincinnati Reds, which you might say are the Baltimore Orioles of the National League. They finished, 5-6 years in a row, not as bad as the Orioles during that period, but they finished slow enough where they had high draft picks and they hit on all of them. And you got to get a little lucky when you on these draft picks, as good as a scouting staff might be. So they would be another surprise. And a little bit of a surprise, just a minor surprise on the positive side, are the Los Angeles Angels. They're 6 games over 500. I would like to see them make the playoffs because what Shohei Ohtani's doing, and I did stay up the other night to make sure I watched him pitch against the White Sox and his last start previous against the Dodgers. The kid throws hard. The kid has great stuff. He struck out 10 the other night. He had 3 hits. He had 2 home runs in the game.
He knocks a homer, then he pitches like 90 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour or more. The next half inning, it's really remarkable to watch him work, isn't it?
Well, it's remarkable. It really is. And the only thing is, I don't know if this is going to fatigue him out towards the end of the year, if he's going to get worn out and tired. I'm not sure. I know the Angels use a 6-man pitching rotation, so that gives him a little breather. And he hasn't played the outfield at all anymore, just DHs. But Alex, he's going to win the American, unless at the halfway point, he's the unanimous MVP in the American League. And unless, God forbid, he gets hurt or something and continues to have the type of season he's having, he's going to unanimously win the AL MVP award. He's also he has a chance to win the Cy Young Award. There's 2 or 3 guys, obviously, that are in the running. But can you imagine? We might see something that we'll never see again, depending on how he pitches the second half of the year. Cy Young Award and MVP. That would be remarkable. I think opponent batting averages for the month of June is like 181. The guy's a remarkable player.
I've seen his swings. His swings look effortless. Like, it just doesn't even look like he's trying. It's just a flick of the wrist and boom. It goes.
That's a very good point. and he's a bigger guy physically than you think. He really is.
We got to see how this goes. Now, we did not cover, because it's been a little while on Terminello's take, but I got to get your take on Wemby and Bedard, the leading draftees of the NBA and NHL, and any other eye-popping moments from either draft that you want to weigh in on here before we're done today.
Well, obviously, Wemby, as he will now be called, now that he's in the NBA, is a remarkable young talent. I never saw him play except highlights, so I can't say I have a talent for what his strengths and weaknesses are. Obviously, he's a very, very good long-range shooter. He can take people away from the basket. Obviously, he's tall, 7'3", officially 7'3" and a half. The Spurs measured him. That's the official height. He's young. Obviously, he's going to get bigger as far as not in height, but he's going to fill out. He's going to need, even in an NBA that is less physical than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, he's going to have to prove himself physically. We'll see if he can do that. Obviously, he puts the Spurs back on the must-watch map. ESPN in the Summer League has the first game that they're going to televise. It's going to be the Spurs against the Hornets, who had the second pick. And so we'll see how good he is. I actually have seen Connor Bedard play more. I've seen full games of Connor Bedard in junior hockey on NHL Network, and I saw him play in the World Juniors. The kid's going to be great from day one. I would be surprised if he doesn't win the Calder Trophy as the Rookie of the Year next year. He's that good. He's got an underrated shot. He's a better skater than people give him credit for. He'll be a difference maker. I'm not going to compare him to Connor McDavid. That's not fair. But yeah, he's the real deal.
Did the local teams make out well this week, this draft season, or what?
Well, from an NBA point of view, the Knicks didn't have a pick in either round, and the two players that the Nets picked are both young. Clowney from Alabama, he's going to be 19, and Whitehead from Duke, he's 18. He's the youngest. He'll be the youngest player in the league next year. I don't know if they'll go back and forth to the G League a little bit to try to hone their skills. I don't know what Sean Marks has planned, but obviously both players are well thought of. And one of the reasons why Whitehead dropped he was supposed to be a top 5 pick. He has foot injuries and he's had foot surgeries. And that's always tricky with basketball players. You have to be careful with foot injuries. But the Nets have taken a chance with foot injuries in the past with Karis LeVert, and he was a terrific player for the Nets before they trade him in the Harden deal. So I think they've done okay. I think Sean Marks obviously is going to try to make the roster better. They're in the Damian Lillard discussion. I don't know if they're going to get him. I don't know if Lillard's going to be traded. He did meet with Portland management the other day. He's a 32-year-old player who's missed some games with injuries, but you could say that about everybody in the NBA. And as far as the NHL draft goes, the only team of the three locally that had a pick with the Rangers, and they drafted Gilbert Perreault, not to be confused with the former Buffalo great American who played at Boston College. And Perreault is highly thought of. And I don't think a lot of scouts thought he was going to drop to number 18. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, I think we should get Matty Lachlan on and talk about the Devils picks, because I know he'd have an expert insight into the draft as well.
He would, yes. And the Devils obviously are not fooling around coming off their great season last year. They signed Timo Meier yesterday, who they got at the trade deadline, who was the best player picked up at the trade deadline in the draft. They signed all their key guys back. I mean,
Well,
they're doing it.
We'll do a check-in. Now, there are three shock factors that I want to discuss here on Terminello's Take. Firstly, I know you're very hyped about St. John's, keeping it at the college level for a second, but you're losing Paj Alexander and Adewusu and Curbelo. I mean, look, it's a big class transferring out of Patino St. John. So how does he sustain even the loss of one of those guys? I feel like it's a big number to transfer out.
Yeah, it is a big number to transfer out. But Alex,
talent too. There was talent there that transferred out.
If he thought they could help, he would convince them to stay. He's done from what everybody says, the players that he's recruited from either from the transfer portal or in the conventional recruiting style are all going to improve St. John's. I'm not going to say St. John's is going to be an NCAA team next year. They're going to be close. They'll be at least a bubble team. But I'm telling you, as we talk here on midway through the calendar year, in 24-25, St. John's is going to be an NCAA team, and they're going to be a high seed. I'm not going to say a 1 seed or a 2 seed. They're going to be a high bracket seed. Rick Pitino is a tremendous coach. He's not fooling around. And he kept Joel Soriano because he knows he can play. And Soriano entered transfer portal and then came out.
He had a great first 9 games, and he was trying to keep the team together. He struggled himself during that stretch there, but maybe it's coaching that's going to help him out here. Now, the other thing, and I live half a mile away from St. John's, and I want them to do well, obviously. And I met Patino in the past, so obviously I want him to do well here too. But a couple of things. Aaron Rodgers at a psychedelics conference. I mean, is this guy going to bring some character to the Jets or what?
Yes, he is. He is going to give the Jets a little cachet that they haven't had for a while. And if he can lead the Jets to a successful season, he could do all the psychedelic stuff he wants. He could do anything he wants to do, psychedelic or going into dark spaces, whatever he needs to do, he could do.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Namath. I don't know if he was that wild when he was young like Rodgers is, but I feel like he might have been because he's wild now as an 60-plus-year-old. But
Joe was way wilder than Aaron Rodgers, but more conventionally wild. He just liked to chase women. And he said, it's un-American not to chase women.
You mentioned being on something. David Wells was actually hung over, and he's well documented in a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. But to end the perfect game episode, I wanted your take because obviously it's been Wells, Coney, Herman, and Don Larson. But you said something so shocking to me yesterday. You said, I'm going to praise Aaron Boone. I haven't heard many in New York say, I'm going to praise Aaron Boone. So what do you got for me before we end tonight?
Yeah. I mean, everybody wants to criticize Aaron Boone for his in-game adjustments and a lot of what they say is nonsense in the post-game press conference. The Yankees are 44-35. And Alex, without Aaron Judge in that lineup, as we said earlier, their lineup is bad, is downright bad. Aaron Boone has done a terrific job of piecing wins together. And that's all you have to do is get in the playoffs. We saw it last year with Philadelphia. Philadelphia won 87 games, and they got to the 6th game of the World Series. They actually were winning 2 games to 1 at one point, and everybody thought they were going to win the World Series before the Astros showed their greatness and won the next 3 games. I mean, you got to give Aaron Boone a break. I don't know what the media, I don't know what Yankee fans are talking about. Okay, so he may not be a Hall of Fame manager, but in this day and age of analytics, in this day and age of how the Yankees want to run the game, this is not the greatest. This is not the 98 Yankees, that's for sure. That's nowhere near. And he's done a spectacular job of getting outs in that bullpen. And I just don't know. Give the guy a break. He's not getting fired. I don't think he's going to get fired even at the end of this year, even if the Yankees get knocked out in the first round.
Well,
but again, many times, Alex, this might be the year that the Yankees get to the World Series, because you see in the past, we can go through history when a lot of great teams in any sport, whether it be any of the four major sports, should have won it and they don't win it. And then one of their teams, while they're still good, they're not great, and they're able to win the World Series or the Super Bowl or the NBA championship or the Stanley Cup. You saw it. You can go back 40 years. The Kansas City Royals, when they won the World Series in '85, that wasn't their best team. They played the Yankees three times in the '70s, three times in the '70s, and in '80. Those teams were better than the '85 Royals, but they didn't win the World Series. The '85 Royals won the World Series. Even with Washington, when they won the World Series, it wasn't as good as the team that they had the year before. Harper wasn't on the team that won the World Series, but they beat the Astros, winning games 6 and 7 in Houston. So you don't know. So you just want to get into the playoffs and see what happens.
Well,
I think Boone's done a good job. I think he's taking unfair criticism.
You remember Bryce said, I'm going to win a World Series in Washington, and I guess he was right, because Washington did win a year after he was gone.
That's it.
To end the show today, we mentioned Justin Shackle, and I want to play this for everybody just so they get a feel. We started with Ryan Rucco, and we'll end with Justin Shackle's call of perfection last night. Now, obviously, FAN, New York Yankees baseball, synonymous with Sterling, but as Lou said, and as I've said, what a great call by Justin Shackle, and we'll hear it right now.
Swung on, ground ball to third. Donaldson's up with it. He throws to first. Domingo German.
I mean, I think that's a great call, Louis. I don't.
It was perfect. He didn't go over the top. He didn't make it about himself. I think it was perfect. Like I said, they both get an A.
And with that, on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network, Terminello's Take. What a week we had to cover this week. I'm glad we got you on, and we'll do this again soon, sir.
Always a pleasure, Alex. Always a pleasure talking sports with you.
All right. That was Lou Terminello. I'm Alex Garrett. We'll talk to you soon on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.